Hi there, it's Mark here. I've been asked to do a video regarding Ableton Live's gain structure. Now, to be perfectly honest, it's really complicated when you start getting into the world of 32-bit floating processing, and 99.9% of the time you don't need it, you don't need to understand it, but it does cause some confusion. So I'm not getting into the maths, and I'm not even going to get into the complexities of it. I'm just going to try and show you what I do to make sure that my mix is of sufficient quality, but also leaves enough headroom for me in my mastering stage. Now basically, Ableton Live internally works at 32-bit. Now, with 32-bit in the digital domain, that basically means that it's impossible to clip. There's just so much headroom, it's impossible to clip. However, that being said, problems will come when, if you try to pass through, say, a file that's in the red at 32-bit through a DAC or your sound card that can't handle that level of processing, i.e. 24-bit or 16-bit, then it may be perceived as digital clipping and can cause rejection problems, especially when burning to CD. So although theoretically you can have it going into the red, best practices say you shouldn't. And I'm just going to show you a couple of ways that I think, if you want to mix in Ableton and keep your tracks more than ready with enough headroom for mastering stages, and if you have a final mix stage as well, of course. Some people like to have their tracks all at the levels that they like, then export the individual tracks as audio and perhaps put them into something like Cubase, Logic or Pro Tools. Do a final mix in there and then get the track ready for mastering. Whereas I will have my mix done here and then I will export it as a stereo 32-bit file and do my mastering in something like Cubase or whatever. Actually, Ableton's not my... I normally only use it, or would only use it for live. So I'm still relatively new to Ableton. So anyway, all I want you to understand is, yes, there's all this complexities about at each mix point it's actually 64-bit, but the internal processing itself is done at 32-bit, which means you have all of this headroom. I believe it's like there's the additional 8 bits above the 24 bits only come into play in certain scenarios and all kinds of crazy stuff. That's only when it's floating point, not when it's 32-bit non-floating point. So yeah, it's really, really complicated. There is stuff in the manual. Well, there's some stuff here, but really, unless you want to get into the geeky aspects of this, it's really not worth looking at. For instance, it's telling you there that the recording audio signals that are pushed into live are neutral, as long as the bit depth set in live preferences are the same as the AD converters that you're using to record. So if your AD converter is 24-bit, if you go into live and you go to options, preferences, and you go to here and make sure it's at 24-bit, the recording itself will be neutral. And then it's got, if you record internal sources, again it will be identical to the source audio, provided that the recording was made at 32 bits. That's because the internal bit depth, or the default bit depth of Ableton Live 9 is 32 bits. To ensure neutral recording of plug-in instruments and any audio signals that are being processed by effects and plugins, internal recording at 32-bit is recommended. Please note, however, that the source audio is already at a lower bit depth. Internal recording at that bit depth will also be neutral. So if all of your samples were at 16 or 24-bit, as long as you've put live to 16 or 24-bit, again the recordings the internal recording will be neutral. Even if you've got a 16-bit audio file and you bounce it to 32-bit, as you see there, it will not increase the sound quality internally. So internally recording an unprocessed 16-bit audio file at 32 bits will not increase the sound quality. The neutrality of internal recording is verified using cancellation tests, what they go into there earlier. So really, if you want to just ignore that and just worry about getting a mix that is being treated as if you can clip if it goes above 0 dBFS, then that's the best way. Now, I'll just show you. This is when everything's at 0 dBFS, yeah? Oops. That wasn't very clever. So as you can see there, it's saying that it's plus 3.51 dBs over 0 dB. Now because it's 32-bit, it's probably okay. But normally what I would do, there's two ways that I would advise you to mix. Pick your favourite. I've got mine, you get yours. So one, you leave it at 0 dB and you mix the tracks, aiming for somewhere in the region of -6 to -3 dB overall, i.e. on the master output. Then that gives, when you come to the mastering stage, you've still got at least -3 dB of headroom to play with. I'll just mix this quick to the kick. So there you go, I've mixed that to -5.82 now. So if I was to export that, I know I would have plenty of headroom. Now the other way to do it is, again, mix the channels, but start with your master down. Now this is the way I do it. The reason I do it like this is because years ago I found that it just gave me the ability to work harder, and I knew that no matter what I'd done over here, unless it was exceptionally loud, would never go above 0 dB. So now if I do the same thing again, what you can see there is it's given me loads of space to really push the channel faders. Now again, it's up to you, it depends how you work. I would probably work to around -10 for an overall. It's just a setting I've came up with. There's nothing scientific about it. There's no, you've got to do it like this, you've got to do it like that. This is just my preference. And the reason I prefer doing it this way is I know that if I've got 75 channels, as long as I've got this down at -6, it's going to take something extraordinarily loud, which I will spot immediately, because the first thing and the best thing to trust is always our ears. We would notice it a mile off. So again, right, let's see what happens if I really push it. So as you can see, I could get it to go over if I wanted to, however. Okay, it's now gone over 0.2 dB, but I know for a fact that that's just crazy. My brain and my ears are telling me, whoa, what are you doing? It's insane. I don't need the visual indication to tell me that there's something wrong with the mix there. So there you go, I've got about minus 10 dB there. So I'll just give you a visual of that. So here I've got the 3 waves in SoundForge. So that's the meters untouched there. Now if I just bring up the dynamic range meter, this is actually free, and it's great because it gives you RMS and dynamic range and peak all at one time, and you can test in mono. It's a free plugin. So right, let's check this out. So as you can see, it's showing me that both it's peaking, the peak levels are gone, there's about 6 dB of dynamic range, and the RMS is about here. Okay, so if we use the other one, this is the one with the channel faders mixed only. So as you can see there, we had loads of space, loads and loads of room. There was still probably 6 dB. What was it? We got 10 dB of dynamic range, 6 on the peak. RMS, I didn't even see what the RMS was at. Minus 16. So there's loads of space there to be worked on. And then the final one, the master output down by 6, and the channel faders mixed also. Really, really low on the RMS. Loads of headroom, loads and loads of headroom. Dynamic range about 10 dB. That's normally what I aim for, about 10 dB, and normally anywhere from kind of 12 to 10 on the RMS. That's my ideal volumes. That's what I like. So I hope that's helped you, and I hope it's kind of made you understand some of the principles. And again, if you go into the manual and look at all the 32-bit stuff and bit rates and stuff, you can get as geeky as you want. If you go onto the internet and type in 32-bit floating audio and dynamic range and bit depth and whatnot, you can find all of that stuff there. But I think it's unnecessary, because at the end of the day, we're making music. It's all about making music, spending as much time as you can to make music and getting good tunes on the go. Okay, I hope that helped. I'll be making loads more videos in the coming weeks for my new website. I hope to see you there. Thanks for watching. Bye.